On October 9th, 1919, the Cincinnati Reds defeated the Chicago White Sox to win their very first World Series, which later became overshadowed by the Black Sox Scandal. But the series itself was actually relatively close, and we're going to dive into how the Reds actually won the 1919 World Series. Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide as you daily learn about sports history to increase your sports knowledge. And today's trivia question is, in what year did the 8 Black Sox actually get charges brought up against them for throwing the World Series? Now, before we get to the series, let's see how these two teams actually ended up in the World Series. Because at this time, there was not really a playoff. It's just whoever won the National League and whoever won the American League would face off in the World Series. So let's first start with the Reds, as they're often forgot about in this series. See, in 1919, they were kind of an upstart team, kind of the underdog for most of their time in the major leagues, as they had not finished higher than third since 1900. And they had only won the National League pennant 2 times before winning handily in 1919. Under new manager Pat Morin, they were able to put together a team with stars such as Eddie Roush, Henny Gore, Jake DeBarrett, and they featured 3 pitchers who had won 19 games or more in Hode Eller, Dutch Rother, and Slim Sally. And they finished winning 96 games, which was 9 games better than second place, the New York Giants. And they set a record for attendance that year, drawing more than 500,000 fans to their home games, which is better than their record of 424,000. And they would face off against the Chicago White Sox, who had the best record in the American League, winning 88 games, beating out the Cleveland Indians by 4 games. Led by Shoeless Joe Jackson, one of the best hitters at the time, and Eddie Collins. They had a great hitting staff, as well as having 2 pitchers who won over 23 games that year, in Lefty Williams and Eddie Cicotte, who won 29 games that year. So though we often remember it for the scandal of 8 White Sox taking money to fix the games, Cincinnati could have been thought of as the frontrunner, as they had won more games, had more pitchers that were dominant, but were just thought of as lesser as they had been the lovable losers for such a long time. But Game 1 happened on October 1st in Cincinnati in front of 30,000 fans. And tickets were going high at the time, as Cincinnati hadn't won the World Series, and they were going for as high as $50 a ticket, which is almost $1,000 today. Now, famously in this game, Cicotte came to the mound, who reportedly got $10,000 the night before to throw the series, hit the Cincinnati's leadoff hitter so that everyone knew the fix was on. But the game was tied 1-1 going into the 4th inning when Cincinnati went on a little bit of a hit streak and scored 5 runs in the 4th and took the game 9-1. Then Game 2 was played the next day on October 2nd in Cincinnati when Lefty Williams took the mound for Chicago. And again, the game was tied 0-0 heading into the 4th inning when the White Sox took the lead, scored 3 runs when Lefty walked 3, who eventually would go on to score. And the game would end 4-2 with a win for Cincinnati. But Game 3 came the next day in Chicago, where Chicago's Dickie Kerr ended up taking the mound, who was not a part of the fix. And then Chicago won 3-0. And in Game 4, Cincinnati was another hard-fought game, but Cincinnati didn't score until the 5th inning, when they scored 2 runs, which was the only time anyone scored the entire game. The 5th game was actually postponed a day due to rain, and both teams were shut out until the 6th inning, when Cincinnati again went on a run in 1 inning and scoring 4 runs, finishing the game 5-0, taking a 4-1 game lead heading into Game 6. Now, you may think 4-1, didn't Cincinnati already win? At this time, they were playing the series best of 9. So Cincinnati needed to win 1 more game. But it wouldn't happen on October 7th in Game 6. As again, Dickie Kerr pitched another dominant game like he did in Game 3. And Chicago came out on a win. And despite Cincinnati leading at the end of the 4th inning, Chicago came back and scored the next 5 runs to win the game in extra innings. And the following day on October 8th, Chicago would again go on to win in a dominant fashion, winning 4-0, taking the lead in the first inning and never looking back. So now the series was 4-3 in favor of the Reds, but Chicago was on a streak. And in Chicago, Cincinnati came out and had Hoyd Heller versus Lefty Williams, where Cincinnati scored 4 runs in the first inning, which set the tone for the game, where they dominated, scoring 10 runs, winning 10-5, and winning their very first World Series. And during this game, Joe Jackson hit the only home run of the series. So the Cincinnati Reds during the series scored 35 runs to 20 runs by the Chicago White Sox. Joe Jackson led all players, hitting .375 for the series, and Greasy Noel led the Cincinnati Reds, hitting .357 for the series. And Hoyd Eller pitched 2 complete games, including 1 shutout, and had an ERA of 2 with 15 strikeouts, helping lead the Cincinnati Reds to a win. And at the time, Cincinnati celebrated, and though the White Sox seemed to play a lackluster series, everyone celebrated the Red Sox for their win. But it wasn't until September of 1920 when the grand jury got together to indict 8 of the White Sox players for conspiracy to fraud and take bribes to throw the 1919 World Series. So it was almost an entire year where the Reds were just enjoying being the champions of the major leagues. But it's often forgot about because of the whole White Sox scandals. And who knows, the Reds were good enough that they could have actually won the series on their own. It wasn't a foregone conclusion. The White Sox weren't so good that they couldn't have just won outright. So it leaves a tarnishment on their World Series win. And now no one remembers the 1919 Reds, but gambling got in the way. And a White Sox cheap owner made their players think that this was the only way for them to make money. It was a sad moment in MLB history, as those 8 players were forever banned from the Major League Baseball, all because of money. So sometimes when we think about sports today, we think about the pro athletes making tons of money, which helps this not be an issue in today's Major League sports, as the players are making so much that they're less likely to be bought off. But it's a sad moment that money changes a great moment for the Reds. We'll always have a little bit of an asterisk next to their World Series when they really shouldn't have. They could have done it on their own. And I want to thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a rating or review wherever you're listening. It really brings joy to my face. And if you want, you can tell us a topic you would like us to cover and your name, and we'll get that done just for you. And come back tomorrow for more daily sports history. And the answer to today's trivia question: in what year did the 8 Black Sox actually get charges brought up against them for throwing the World Series? It wasn't until September of 1920 that they got indicted by the grand jury, meaning it was almost 1 year after the World Series before everything came crumbling down.